This episode of the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour is sponsored by the law offices of Alfred Guillaume III, a boutique criminal defense firm located in Washington, D.C. The firm specializes in defending federal criminal cases. You can learn more about the firm by visiting our website at guillaumelaw.com. That's GUILLAUME law.com. Welcome to the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour. On this month's episode, I was joined by Louisiana State Senator and practicing civil litigation attorney, Royce Duplessis, Esquire. Senator Duplesis represents Louisiana's 5th State Senate District, which is primarily located in the great city of New Orleans, Louisiana. He and I discussed his career path and the things that led him to become one of the state's most visible political leaders. We also discussed his time at Howard University School of Law and how that experience helped prepare him for his current role in politics. It is no secret that I believe that his future is bright. I keep telling him that the country needs a leader like him. Who knows? Maybe you'll hear more about him on the national stage in the years to come. In the meantime, consider this interview your introduction to a rising political star. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is an episode you don't want to miss. Welcome to another episode of the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, my brother from another, my halfway fake pretend cousin, state senator from the great state of Louisiana, or Louisiana, depending on how you say it, where you're from, Mr. Esquire Royce Duplessis. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing fantastic, brother. So happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're here, and this is actually an unexpected interview because literally I ran into you at the airport and you're in town for an event, and I said, Royce, is that you? And you were like, man, I was going to call you. I said, man, you wasn't going to call me, but it's all good. The next thing out of your mouth was, I need to get on that podcast. And I said, right, brother, we're going to make that happen.
That's
so
right.
I appreciate you so much for being here, for making time in your busy schedule. We'll talk about why you're here in D.C. Because as everybody knows, you are a busy man in the city of New Orleans, representing District 5.
Yeah.
Correct?
Mostly uptown, a lot of the Central Business District, lots of Tremé 7th Ward area. So I like to say it's the places you visit,
right, if
you're not from there, because it's where all the activity is.
All the activity is.
Yeah.
My grandfather, his family, they're from Tremé, and so even though I don't live in New Orleans anymore, you still you're my state senator too.
That's
man.
right. And we have Xavier in the district.
So Xavier University of Louisiana, which
that's
actually
right.
brings me to my next point. You and I'm a little bit older than you, but we share a whole lot in common.
Yes, we do.
And I'm going to go through the list right now. We can kind of go through these points individually during the interview, but I want to let you know, we haven't talked about this, but I kind of thought, you know what, me and Royce have so much in common. It's crazy. We both from New Orleans. We both attended Xavier University of Louisiana.
Yep.
XU. All right. We both received our law degrees from the best, most famous, excellent institution on the planet, Howard University School of Law. HU.
You know.
All right.
That's right.
We come from a family of boys, all brothers.
Yep.
You have 3 brothers.
That's right.
I have 1 brother. And all of the grandchildren are girls.
Yes.
Did you realize that? Like,
it's crazy.
No boys.
Yeah.
It's all girls. We're raising strong women.
That's right.
And on your side, you've got 7. Is it 7 girls total between you and all your brothers?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I have 2 girls. The people who listen to this podcast will tell you I'm always talking about them. No sons. Maybe there'll be sons in the future. Maybe not. Who cares?
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Look, I love being a girl dad, as I know my brothers do. I think my parents were hoping for a grandson, but they had all sons, and now they have all granddaughters.
Right.
So,
Your parents had 4 boys, and
right.
now they have 7 granddaughters.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
That is pretty crazy. I love it. But we are. I would love to talk about family here on this show. This is a family show. Mm-hmm. But I know you are in town for official business, and I want to kind of introduce our audience to you, your journey to becoming a state senator in Louisiana, and your time in law school at Howard University, and your time here in D.C. And I'm so glad you're here, man, because you're like, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, man. You are the next president of the United States. Maybe not the next, but close to it. But clearly the next mayor of New Orleans. I've been lobbying you for that for how long?
You have been pushing that you've been consistent for many years. I think before I even went into elected office, you've been saying that. So you never know what might happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here first. Okay, I'm predicting that Royce Duplessis will be the next mayor of the city of New Orleans. Okay, I mean I've been saying this since 2000 and I don't know when.
Yeah, look, I believe it's all about timing and what the people want to see. So yeah, I'm here to serve.
Man, and let's talk a little bit about that. You are an elected official. You're a state senator, and what you've already kind of talked about the districts that the neighborhoods and districts that you cover. But like, what exactly is a state senator, and what did you do for your constituents on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So you have local government, you have state government, and you have federal government. So serving at the state level in the legislature, I actually started in the House of Representatives. I started. In 2018, I was elected to the House.
Okay, so just like the federal government set up, the state government set up the same way. You have
same way,
congressmen and senators.
Exactly. You have U.S. congressmen and you have U.S. senators at the state level, but I'm at the national level. Mm-hmm. But at the state level, you also have your House and you have your Senate. So in Louisiana, you have 39 senators and you have 105 House members. So the districts in Louisiana are about 3 times the size of a House district. So in the House, my constituency was around 45,000. In the Senate, my constituency is about 120,000.
And it's all based in the city of New Orleans?
Predominantly. I have a little bit of Jefferson Parish.
Okay, so what's Jefferson Parish for those people who don't know?
Yeah, so Jefferson Parish is a parish that's immediately surrounding Orleans Parish. So yeah.
Right, you say parish and you smile because my next question is, for folks who don't know, what's a parish mean?
Oh, right, yeah. So a parish is essentially a county in Louisiana. We don't have counties; we have parishes.
Right.
Yeah. So that's essentially what it is. It functions as a county would in other states. Okay. So I have most of my district. I'd say probably 90% of my district is in Orleans Parish, but I have a significant, decent portion of my parish that's in Jefferson.
About 10%.
Yeah.
And how did you get into politics in the first place?
You
went to law school.
Yeah, I went to law school. I'll tell you, it was not something that I grew up thinking that I would do. I didn't know any politicians growing up. My dad was a school teacher, Orleans Parish school system. My mother worked for the U.S. Postal Service, and we were not involved in politics.
Right, on the local or state level.
No. I mean, my parents always taught us the importance of being involved in your community.
Right.
They always taught us the importance of voting and making sure that our voices were heard, but we were not particularly involved in the political process outside of that, of just being good community citizens. But for me, I really don't know how I stumbled into this, because as I said, it wasn't something that I thought I'd be doing. Right. I was always on the track of going either the corporate or business route.
Yeah, you went to law school. Was that your intention in law school, to go into politics?
It wasn't. I had an internship my senior year in college for a state representative for a time. It just kind of was just a passing thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then I was working at Entergy. I left there and went to work. I was actually going to go to law school.
Okay.
I had decided I was going to go to law school.
And you graduated from college in what year?
2004.
Okay.
Right.
I finished in 99, a little bit before you.
Yeah, so 2004. And I was going to go to law school the fall of 2006. But what happened in the fall of 2005? Hurricane Katrina.
Right.
So after Katrina, I ended up in Dallas. And you may not remember this, but you and I ended up on a phone conversation because I
think I do remember this
because
our cousin in common, right?
I was telling her, I was like, I want to go to law school,
right? And she was telling me, shout out to Kim Laparollery, yeah, Dr. Lap as they call her,
Dr. Lap, and Dr. Marseille White. Those are my cousins, your cousins,
right? Now people who. Let's take a brief break for a second. Folks are going to really get confused when we talk about cousins, and you and I are not related that we know of.
Right, not that we know of.
But we have cousins that we share.
Right, yeah.
You know what? I would just ask the question, like my own question, like this. Louisiana is complicated and simple all at the same time.
It is. Right? It really is.
I relate to them on one side of my family.
Yeah.
You are actually a closer relation. I'm more of a distant cousin.
Wow.
But it's a crazy thing. And I remember my cousin Kim, our cousin Kim, calling me up and saying, "Yeah, I got a cousin. He want to go to law school. Can you talk to him? And he want to go to Howard. Yeah. Can you let him know what it's like and just tell him what it's like. Just make time for him on the phone." And I said, "Sure. I'm a big Howard fan. I talk about Howard all the time." I don't remember what I said, but I do remember the phone call. Though.
Yeah, you had just graduated. Not only did you just graduate, I think you had just passed the bar.
Okay.
You had just taken the Maryland bar.
Oh, wow.
I will never forget the conversation because you were such a great advocate for the school and for going to law school.
Right.
So it was, I remember you telling me, because I think I asked you a question about the bar and you were like, "Okay, did you take the LSAT?" Yeah, you was like, "Slow down, bro. You need to take it one step at a time." And you kind of had to like check me right quick.
Well, because the LSAT is the exam you take to get accepted
into law school. So going back to the original question, it was during that period when I was still in Dallas. We were evacuated. I was trying
after the storm. Storm happened in 2005.
Yeah, so
you're not displaced from New Orleans, from your hometown.
Yeah. I had a brother who was living in Dallas at the time, my oldest brother, and we were there. And I wanted to go to law school that fall of 2006. So
and why Howard?
So believe it or not, I ended up at a conference, at a law school conference, and I met someone named Reggie McGahee.
A shout out to Reggie McGahee. Dean McGahee, as he's in the former life.
Yeah.
He's since left Howard.
Well, he's forever Dean to me.
He's forever Dean, man. He's a good dude.
Yeah, so he was talking up Howard in a way where I was like, nah, nobody can be this passionate.
Right. It's amazing.
But it wasn't just the passion. He had the numbers to back it up in terms of job placement and success for Howard graduates, and it was like second to none in my opinion in the District of Columbia.
Right.
I wanted to get out of New Orleans.
That was your first time away from home, right?
Yeah. I grew up, lived my whole life.
You grew up in New Orleans, went to high school in New Orleans, went to college in New Orleans.
Yep.
And then you got displaced for a while, and you wanted to go to Howard.
Yeah. Now let me say this. Before I made that decision though, I was actually still looking at like Loyola or Tulane. I had gotten into Tulane.
Both located in New Orleans.
Yeah, both located in New Orleans, and I'd gotten a decent scholarship to both of those schools. But
okay, excuse me, smarty pants.
No, I'm just saying. I think they were giving scholarships because
man, don't be humble.
Because
Go ahead.
They were trying to retract students.
Claim that, brother.
Either way, it was. That's really where I was looking to go at first. Right. But I hit a little detour. I got to tell you about this detour.
Please do.
To go back to the original question about how I got into politics, there was a guy who was running for the city council. First election after Katrina.
Okay.
This was the spring of 2006. And a mutual friend of mine asked me to just volunteer in his campaign, which I did. And he ended up winning. And then he asked me to be his chief of staff. I was 23 at the time. So I said, look, I'm planning to go to law school, right, this fall. Okay. So I'm not really looking to go work at City Hall.
Right.
But I decided to defer law school that year to be a part
had
of.
you got accepted to law school already?
I did.
To Tulane and Loyola?
Yeah.
Okay, you had not applied to Howard.
I hadn't even applied to Howard at this point.
Wow.
Right? But I had to make the decision, and I had to make it quick, what I was going to do. So talked to my family about it. Of course, my mom, she wasn't super thrilled with it. She's like, Royce, people are always going to be offering you opportunities. You can't defer your plans for somebody else's. But
sounds like a typical mom, right?
Yeah,
looking out for her best interest for her son.
But it was probably one of the best decisions I made.
Oh, it was,
even then, it wasn't my intent to go into politics. But another side note about Howard Law. So the councilman that I worked for, even after having spoken to you, having met Dean Reggie McGahee, the councilman that I worked for, he was a Howard Law grad.
Howard runs deep.
Yeah, so it was like all of these great brothers coming out of Howard Law, great brothers and sisters. But I knew so many good people, talented lawyers who were coming out of this institution. I wanted to be a part of it.
And I should say, for those who don't know, our cousin, Dr. Lapp, she also went to Howard.
That's right.
Dentistry school.
That's right. So that also helped.
So exactly.
That played a role because she was originally going to the University of Iowa or something in the Midwest.
You know, I think I have forgotten about that.
And at the last minute, she just chose to go to Howard Law, and I just knew that it was just going to be.
What a choice. What a difference.
Yeah. Just to be in the atmosphere of Howard University School of Law, to be
Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton,
you know?
Houston, to stand on the shoulders of those amazing icons.
Yeah, I say it all the time. Howard University School of Law is where dreams come true.
It's where dreams come true. I know mine did. My whole life, I owe my current life and the last 20 plus years is because of Howard. The fact that we're sitting here together is because of Howard.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. My wife, she attended Howard for undergrad. And funny story about that. The summer she moved back home from D.C. was the summer I was moving to D.C.
So she's from New Orleans as well?
She's from New Orleans as well. And she was starting at Loyola that fall.
Wow.
Which I was torn between Loyola and Tulane. But then
she's a lawyer as well.
She's a lawyer as well, exactly. So she started at Loyola Law School. Yeah.
Wow.
So
and
just a little.
You missed each other.
Yeah, yeah.
And we can get to the love story in a minute.
That's another story, right? Yeah.
But you met after law school.
We met right before law school.
Oh, before law school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so there's a little story there. Yeah. So,
so we were talking about your first political job, and that was working for this city councilman. Did you end up taking that job?
I did. I worked for him as his chief of staff. I worked for him for a year, learned the ins and outs of city government, learned the importance of having good people in office, the importance of people who are committed to the community, the importance of just good public servants, and the fact that we need to let's have fewer politicians and more public servants. So being in the midst of it,
and he was all of that.
Yeah. And I got
let's shout him out. We haven't said his name yet.
Oh yeah, James Carter.
James Carter.
Yeah. Very prominent Howard Law grad. He actually goes back every year and teaches a class on civil litigation. So he's a big time trial attorney now. He's actually vice president of the National Bar Association.
Wow.
Yeah. He'll probably be president at some point soon, I imagine.
But the National Bar Association, for those who don't know, is the oldest organization for African American lawyers in the United States.
Yeah.
And the fact that your, I guess, mentor, I'm going to call him, is in the upper echelon of the NBA says a lot. I mean, he's clearly his protege.
Yeah, he's doing big things, and I have so much to attribute to that experience of working with him. I was 23 years old at the time. He asked me to be his chief of staff, and I didn't really know much about anything.
And what is the chief? You know what? I'm not a political person. So chief of staff. What does the chief of staff do?
Yeah, a chief of staff can have a lot of different roles and responsibilities, but in that particular office, I was basically his right hand. Whatever he needed, that's what we did. You know,
preparing him for hearings,
everything,
just calling constituents,
everything,
all the above.
I was his double when I needed to be. You know, just being his person, working on everything from top to bottom.
So you spent a year with him, and then you applied to law school again.
Yes.
And this time Howard made the cut. Now, did you apply to the other law schools again, Loyola and Tulane as well?
I believe I did. But it's funny because I actually did, because Loyola had a night program, and we were flirting with the idea of me staying on with the councilman and going to Loyola at night. But I said, no, let me get the real experience and go to Howard for law school.
Man, let me tell you
full-time.
something, brother. That was the best experience you ever made.
Yeah.
So, do you remember? Can you tell me a story about the first time that you stepped foot on the law school's campus at Howard? Like, what are some of your first memories? How were you feeling?
Wow, I mean, it's a really majestic place. When you're going down Van Ness.
Van Ness is the street.
Van Ness is the street, so it's right off Connecticut Ave. I went to visit before actually going to the school. So
did I. I stayed with our cousin Kim.
Okay. So I go to visit, and a very close friend of mine from high school, he was a year ahead of me at Howard Law. His name's James Moffitt from New Orleans. We went to high school together, and he ended up going to Howard Law. So when I was able to go up there and basically be
right, so you had it all, man. He had the inside track already.
He was able to show me around.
Oh yeah,
and you turn off Connecticut Ave and you're going down Van Ness Street.
It's like a hill that you go down.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
And you're going into like this dead end that butts up against Rock Creek Park.
A beautiful location.
So it's secluded. It's not, the law school campus is not on the main campus.
Yeah, we're the only school, or one of the only schools that's not on the main campus, which is on Georgia Avenue.
Yeah, so you see this beautiful library.
Beautiful buildings, yeah.
And you see the forest behind it, and it's all hilly.
Yes.
And it's like its own little space.
Its own world.
Its own little world. And it's just beautiful. It's black excellence. That's all I could think when I got there.
I remember I went to that. I think you probably went to the orientation for accepted students, or you hadn't necessarily made your commitment yet, but you got in.
Right.
And I remember that our cousin Kim, she drove me. She was living in D.C. at the time. I think that was the last time she ever lived in D.C. This is over 20 years ago. Wow. she moved out the city and went to the suburbs. Okay.
Yeah.
But she dropped me off. I was late because she got lost. God bless you, Kim. I love you anyway. And I remember looking, was lost. I was looking around, and I walked into this room. It was like out of a movie. And all these people were already seated, and there was the presentation that was being given. And I remember seeing Reggie McGahee. He was one of the people that was up there.
Yep.
He had just graduated not too long ago. He wasn't a dean yet. And he was talking about the same thing, numbers, and how Howard is second to none. And I remember standing in the back, looking at him, looking at the room. Everyone was seated, all these black and brown faces everywhere. And I was just, something came over me. I already knew that I was going to go there, and I wanted to go there. But I just was like, wow, I'm a part of this.
That's right.
I felt, and I get goosebumps talking about it now.
Right.
I mean, my experience, and maybe you have had the same experience when you were at Xavier. For me, having grown up in New Orleans and actually moving away and coming back right after high school, for me, I had 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the, people who come to Xavier. A lot of them are from New Orleans, and there's about half the population that is not from New Orleans. And I had 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I feel like I didn't get the full experience that I could
not
have
be from
gotten.
out of town. Right.
Right. If I was the traditional college experience.
Right.
Because I still had family and friends that I knew, that I had grown up with and I'd been with a lot of my life. But when I went to Howard, it was the first time where I felt this. We were all in it together.
Right.
And we formed these unbreakable bonds to this day that we've still maintained. And, I can put it all, I remember that moment walking through that door, man.
Yeah, that was
and
powerful.
Looking out and seeing all those faces, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I was a Spike Lee movie. I feel like I was in, something.
There's nothing like it. It's a super special place. I mean, to be a part of the legacy you talked about, Justice Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton Houston.
He's on the wall. I don't know if you know, he's on the wall right behind you.
Yeah, Charles Hamilton Houston, and just that legacy. Did you know AP Turo also went to Howard Law
did not
class
know
of
that.
1925?
AP Turo, a civil rights pioneer in New Orleans, has a street named after him.
In Prominent Street in the 7th Ward.
Yeah.
AP Turo went to Howard Law class of 1925. He was like the Thurgood Marshall of the South. Handled all of those civil rights cases. He and Thurgood, he was local counsel for NAACP during all of the desegregation cases, all the voting rights cases, all the cases to get equal pay for teachers. He was the giant, and he was the one who broke down barriers for us. He's a Howard University School of Law graduate.
Wow.
Yeah.
Other things.
Yes.
I never knew that.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that just speaks to the legacy of our school.
Yeah.
And I don't know what either one of my daughters wants to become a lawyer, but if you want daddy to pay for it, you know where you got to go.
Right.
Just kidding.
Right.
Just kidding. Not really. Just kidding. So, we have this shared love for Howard, and, it's a lifelong connection, and hopefully we can maintain that connection by having our seeds, as they say in hip hop, following our footsteps. But if not, that's fine too.
Right.
So let's go back to you being a politician. You graduate from Howard in 2010, correct?
Correct.
And you go immediately back to New Orleans. Do you stay in D.C.? What do you do next?
Yeah. So before I became a public servant, I actually went to clerk for a judge at the D.C. Superior Court.
Okay, you were a judicial law clerk.
Yeah. So I
was too.
Yeah. And you played a role in that as well, whether you know it or not. And I say this because when I got to law school, I never thought that I would be a judicial law clerk.
Right.
The idea, something about it just didn't.
So for those who don't know, what is a judicial law clerk?
Yeah, so a judicial law clerk is you work for a judge, and it's usually either a law student or a law school graduate, somebody with a law degree, and you're essentially the person who helps the judge form his or her opinions. You do research, you do writing,
You do the grunt work.
you do all the work. You help them form their opinions.
Make them look good if you're good at your job.
Absolutely. So different judges have different dockets. So what your work might look different depending on
Some
whatever
judges might
docket.
be in charge of the criminal cases. One might be in charge of the civil.
Right.
Somebody in charge of family.
Yeah, you might be on a bankruptcy docket. Who knows?
Correct.
Right? But we were on a criminal felony docket, D.C. Superior Court. So we had the real stuff.
Right.
I mean,
That's what I do for a living.
Yeah,
So yes,
yeah,
man,
exactly.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Like all the true crime stuff, all the stuff on the 6 o'clock,
Right.
10 o'clock news. Those were the cases.
You were the
we
case
had.
that your judges.
And we lived in trial. So I got to see trial advocacy all day long. It was the best experience ever. He was a former U.S. attorney in D.C., And
what's his name?
Thomas J. Motley. Yeah, now
Judge Motley.
he's on senior status now. So I was fortunate and blessed to be able to be his law clerk, because I didn't decide to start applying until like the very end of my 3L year, my third year in law school.
These jobs are actually hard to get.
Yep.
You know, and I fell into my clerkship by mistake. I had a friend who was working for the Judge Herman Dawson in Prince George's County in Maryland, and was like, I'm going to be leaving soon. You should apply. I was like, to be honest with you, I didn't know what the job entailed. Right. And Judge, God bless him, he's like, okay, he's hired.
Yeah.
He was a Howard graduate.
That's awesome.
And he supported the law school. And I guess I interviewed with him, and I guess we hit it off.
Yeah.
And I just like you, I had a very similar experience where I saw so much. But I will say it's not Judge, it's not your fault, but I was severely underpaid. I had student loans, I had all kind of stuff.
Yeah, I will say, to that point, I had done a year, and my judge had actually offered me an opportunity to stay on for a second year, but I was also trying to pay back some bills.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And I remember we had a going away party for you.
Yeah.
It was at that restaurant. It's a New Orleans themed restaurant in D.C.
Yep.
It doesn't exist anymore. I can't think of the name of it. It was on H Street, Northeast.
That's right.
I can't. Was it True Orleans? I don't know.
That was it.
Was it True Orleans?
That was it.
Right. That's the name of that restaurant.
Sure was. That's right.
I still have a picture from that night when everybody.
Oh man, you got to find that to me and send it to me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a great
good
time.
night.
I was so blessed to have big cousins in DC who took care of me.
Right.
My DC experience was amazing. We got to see the Saints win up here. It was
the Saints
awesome.
won the Super Bowl that year. I remember we saw that game together.
That's right. It was snowed in, but it was a great experience.
Sure
but
was.
Ultimately, New Orleans came calling. I knew there would be a time at some point that I would return home. I didn't know when, but there was a law firm.
I was sad to see you go, as I recall.
Yeah. It was sad to go, honestly. I mean, but
you got,
But I knew at some point I was going to be going home. There was a law firm who I had been a summer law clerk for in D.C. one summer after my 1L year.
Your first year of law school.
My first year of law school. I guess you call it serendipity. They decided to open up a New Orleans office.
Wow.
Right around the time I was finishing up my first year judicial clerkship. And I got a call asking about some interest of going to do some work at this law firm, and made the decision to return home.
Wow. And, for those who don't know, when you go from a law clerk salary, I think at the time, my salary was not even $40,000.
That sounds about right.
Right. And then you go to a law firm. I've never worked at a law firm. I was the prosecutor, and then I went and opened my own practice. But I've been told from my many friends like you and others, when you go to a law firm, your pay increases exponentially.
Yeah.
It grows, man. And I can only imagine the lifestyle change that you had, right? And before we move on, let's kind of bring up a point that, for us, we went to Howard. Howard is a predominantly black school, it's HBCU.
Yep.
And many of the students come from a very similar background where they're not dealing with parents who have generational wealth. Mm-hmm. I don't have generational wealth. I'm assuming you do not as well.
I do not.
And we had to make certain choices. And it's interesting to me as I get older and I see my kids are in private school, and I'm blessed to be able to make enough money to put them in private school. But I'm a poor private school parent versus some of the other people I see. And I'm not begrudging them, because everybody's circumstance is different. But in the legal context, law clerks make next to nothing.
Right.
But it's great experience.
Right.
But if you had parents or a family that could support you, that could pay for your housing and do all these other things, you might have taken that extra year and gotten, more or different experience.
Right.
And it's just something that I don't know what to think of it one way or the other than it just is what it is.
Yeah.
I had to stop working being a prosecutor because I just wasn't making enough money.
Right.
I had 3 degrees and no TVs in my house. All right, man. It was tough.
It's an unfortunate reality that people who want to go into public service, whether it's be a prosecutor, a judicial law clerk, or an elected official like myself, it doesn't favor everyday working people who don't have generational wealth.
Right.
It doesn't favor young people who are trying to make a life for themselves. It favors the independently wealthy, the retired, or people who, have an arrangement, whatever it is. I don't know, because I'm like you. I'm a working dad. I have a solo practice, but it's unfortunate because there's so many good people who would
Right.
keep those public service jobs,
Yeah.
but not for the need to go and make a living.
And a lot of times those are people of color, particularly
absolutely.
African Americans.
No question.
You know, your mother and father are a school teacher and a postal worker, and those are quote unquote good jobs.
Right.
Right? No,
That's
I'm not
right.
even being funny. Like,
it's true.
Those are good jobs. My parents are educators as well.
Yeah.
But they don't make you wealthy.
Right.
At all.
At all.
And they give you a great background, and your children have a good education and appreciation for that. But you're not going to get wealthy. Like we never to this day, my family, we never talk about money.
Right.
Like it's like go to school, get an education, get a good paying job, retire, and die. Yeah. And that's it. Like it's nothing about making money, investing, none of that.
Right.
I'm trying to change a little bit of that, and it's not their fault. They didn't know. Our parents didn't know. They're a few generations removed from slavery when you think about it.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. But every generation moves it further.
Right.
You moved it further than your parents.
Right.
I'd like to think on some level I moved it further than
Absolutely.
my parents.
You went to law school and you're an elected official.
Yeah, I think my parents, they certainly gave us the foundation, gave us a great blueprint to see what success looked like. If you work hard, if you stay dedicated, you don't have to make all the money, and you can be successful, raise your family if you prioritize on what's most important.
Right.
And that's what I'm so thankful for with my parents. I say they weren't like super political, but I believe they prioritized what was right, which was me and my brothers. But they
4 boys.
Yeah.
That's so in this day and age, that's so expensive. I can't even imagine having 4 kids.
Right. Me either.
Right.
We just have one.
I got 2 and I can't afford them. I'm about to give you one.
But we prioritize. We make it work.
You do what you got to do.
That's
but
right.
we are in such a different position than our parents.
Yeah. Oh, big time.
That we are, and we owe it all to them. We literally, we obviously owe it all to them. They birthed us, they raised us, they supported us financially and otherwise. Continue to do so. It's just amazing. It's really, people talk about the American dream. I think we are living, you and I, and people like us, and other communities as well. But I don't know, my community, I see it every day, and we are living that dream. We are our ancestors' wildest dreams.
Amen.
True
to that.
Right.
That's a fact.
It is a fact.
That is a fact.
Yeah.
You think about my great grandfather. He came to this country as a stowaway from Honduras.
Oh wow, you got some Honduran up in here.
British Honduras. This is my mom's grandfather, so it's my great grandfather. Came here in the Treme,
he fit right in.
No formal education, right?
We love
worked, and built his family, and now, each generation, I believe, has been able to build on that legacy and grow from that.
And it just goes to show, and obviously we are both very biased, but I don't care. What a special place New Orleans is, and what a special community, and an African American community that it has, a substantial African American community, and the sense of community that the people have with one another. And I don't know if you see it like this, but I kind of see you in the tradition of the great post-segregation, the great black politicians like Dutch Morial, who was the first black mayor of New Orleans, Sidney Bartholomew, folks that from that great generation that our parents came from, that in this rich political tradition that you are now today, 2024, continuing. Royce Duplessis. And again, I'm going to say it again. I'm going to plug you again. The next mayor of New Orleans. You heard it here first. And after that, the sky's the limit, man. I really, truly believe that about you. I've always told you that. I do.
You have consistently supported me, and that means a lot. I appreciate you so much, brother. Thank you.
I just want that appointment to the Supreme Court, okay?
Okay. I'm happy to write a letter on your behalf, right?
You saw it first. You saw it first, okay? I'll take Attorney General, man. That's all. Like, I don't need the Supreme Court. I'll be Attorney General. It's okay. But no, seriously, man. You are really, truly an inspiration to me.
Wow.
And I just see that the future for you is so bright.
Thank you, brother.
So I want you to keep pushing forward.
Thank you.
But I want you to tell your story. I want our folks to know, to know your story. You go back home.
Right.
This is what year? It's 2000.
This was 2011. This is 2011 at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, fall of 2011. So I go to work for a big law firm. Another thing I said I'd never do. This is a multinational law firm.
Gotta make money too.
Yeah,
man. You
yeah.
gotta live.
But it was great experience. So I was doing energy regulatory work at the time, and then this really crazy opportunity came along I was not expecting. The Chief Justice of the Louisiana Supreme Court. I had been at the law firm, I think somewhere around 3 or 4 years. I can't remember, but I got a call from the Chief Justice of the Louisiana Supreme Court, who at the time was Burnett Joshua Johnson, the first black woman Chief Justice of the Louisiana Supreme Court. And she had a job opportunity that she wanted me to consider.
You know what? I think I remember that actually.
Right. So she had this opportunity for me to work as special counsel. And I say opportunity for me to consider. It was like, no, you come and take this job. It's
Nice.
like Chief Justice. Because initially I was like, I don't know, Chief. I don't really want to, I was comfortable where I was.
Right.
Yeah,
you
good
step out of
salary.
your comfort zone.
And
again, you're not, when you take a job in the public sector, your money's going to decrease substantially.
Correct. So I knew.
So you were making good money.
Right.
You're like, oh wow, this is nice.
Yeah. And I didn't have any complaints, right? And I wasn't necessarily looking to go back into government at that time. But when the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court calls you, you don't really have much room to say no.
The first black Supreme Court justice.
Yeah.
Right.
So I another incredible opportunity. So I was able to go and work for her for around 4 years, I think. And I was special counsel, worked on a lot of different policy for the judiciary, because as the Chief Justice for the Supreme Court, she ran the judiciary, right, for the state of Louisiana.
Wow.
So it was a big administrative
That's
job.
a huge
right. So
deal.
she's doing more than just jurisprudence and cases, but she's actually overseeing the administrative policy for the courts throughout the state of Louisiana. So that required me to go up to Baton Rouge a lot, work on state policy, criminal justice reform, which we were doing back in 2017. We did some pretty historic moves to try to make Louisiana not be the incarceration capital of the world.
Right.
We could talk about that, but ultimately, and then during that time, I was also serving on a lot of boards and commissions. I had been chairman of the New Orleans City Planning Commission, was always volunteering, trying to be involved in the community.
So you were passionate about this work.
Yeah, this was just what I would do naturally,
Right.
always serving. So at some point, I basically had to have a conversation with myself,
Right.
and with the man up above, and with my family, and say, look, I'm in this position.
Now, were you married at the time, or were you single?
I got married in 2016. So I was married in 2016, and when the opportunity came for me to consider running for office, that was in 2017 going into 2018.
Okay, I want to talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But while you're working for Chief Justice, you are...
I got married while I was working for the Chief Justice. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 2016.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to get the date right. I don't want any mad wives.
Right. Yeah, it was November 2016. I'm certain of this.
All right, there we go. November 2016.
Yeah.
Yes. To good husbands, okay?
Yes. Yeah.
And at that point, your wife is working in government, or she's in private practice?
I want to say at the time she was in private practice, because she was also, again, she's a lawyer. She was also a judicial law clerk. She clerked at the district level and at the appellate level. But she, at that time, had moved to work for a law firm in New Orleans.
So the appellate level is when working for a judge who's handling primarily appeals, not
right.
Trials.
Trials, exactly.
Okay, so she was a law clerk twice.
Yes.
Okay, and then she went into private practice.
That's
now,
right.
One of the other things, too, that I learned as a lawyer is that if you stay in the judicial clerkship game long enough, or if you're with the right judge, the next job can be very lucrative. Mm-hmm. And that's, obviously I didn't benefit from that, but folks like you and your wife did.
Yeah.
Just kidding, Judge.
Yeah. Look, it's an incredible thing, not just to have on your resume, but law firms do find it attractive when you have had the opportunity to clerk for a judge, because you're getting
I would highly recommend it to any law student.
And you get the relationship with the judge.
Right.
It's like none other. I highly recommend people clerking if they can.
Now, did you still maintain a relationship with your judge?
I do. We talked just a few days ago.
Nice.
Because he's still in D.C. He's out of town right now, so I won't see him while I'm out here right now. But yeah, we shot
him out anyway.
Yeah, we still stay in touch. And he's like you. He's somebody that is always kind of spoke my future, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
Look, man.
So he's always been kind of like predicting, even when I say, no, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to just be a lawyer. He's for some time now been a big supporter and pushing me to go to the next level.
When you're a lawyer, the future is limitless. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of the law degree in general. I would
Yeah.
highly recommend anyone who's considering going to law school to do it, because you see, like, I'm a criminal defense attorney. You are a state senator. We both have the same degree.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many of our other friends and colleagues that have the same degree and do so many different things. I don't know any other profession that can really speak to that other than lawyers.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I love having gone to law school. I love practicing law, which I still do. I still do civil litigation. I'm a plaintiff's lawyer.
Now, wow, see, that's interesting because, you know, here in D.C., we can't do that.
Yeah, no, in Louisiana, you have to because they don't pay us. I mean, we make about $16,000 a year. So
Oh, wow.
you have to, unless you're independently wealthy, which I'm not, you have to
Right.
have you have to have some type of job outside of the legislature.
Wow,
Yeah, so
I did not realize that
I still practice law.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you do civil cases.
Yeah, civil cases.
Nothing criminal.
I've had some criminal cases, but I'm not really into the criminal. I'm pretty much all exclusively.
Can't handle it,
civil.
huh? Can you?
Yeah, I leave
not
it
smart enough.
I leave it to the experts like you. You know, yeah.
That's
yeah.
an inside joke because everybody knows
Yeah.
that the civil litigation game is intense and competitive and
Yeah.
cutthroat.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
But man, so that is, I have, you know, there's some of my best friends in the world, my brothers from Mississippi. Shout out to the Simmons twins.
Oh, yeah.
Who are like you. They serve in the city and state government, but they have their own law practice as well.
Right.
But that's a southern thing. They're in Mississippi, and in DC, it's not allowed. You've got to, well, I should say, it is to an extent, but we can talk about that another time.
Yeah.
I want to focus more on you right now. So you are making a very important decision around the time you've gotten married, right? You after your marriage and everything, you're working for the judge, and now you got to figure out what's my next move,
Right.
and what happens.
Yeah. So I'm working at the Louisiana Supreme Court, and this is technically the second judge that I've worked for. Because remember, I clerked for Judge Motley in D.C.
Right.
Came home, worked for the law firm, volunteering, serving in the community. Then I go to work for the Louisiana Supreme Court with the Chief Justice, and a seat opens up. A seat for the state house opens up, and Crystal, my wife, she and I just moved into a new neighborhood in a part of town that I didn't grow up in. So it was a new neighborhood.
What neighborhood is that?
Central City. So I grew up in Gentilly Woods / Pontchartrain Park. That's
My grandmother's neighborhood.
Yeah, right there on Press Drive. Parents are still there. So that was the neighborhood I grew up in, and we ended up moving into Central City. So, but I had been living there long enough to be legally domiciled, long enough to run. So a seat came open in the state house, and again, a lot of prayer, a lot of conversation with the family, and
You
ultimately
decide to take that seat.
ultimately made the decision to take a shot, and that required me to resign from my job at the Supreme Court.
So that big $16,000 a year job,
Yeah.
you had to leave,
Yeah.
and then you decide to throw your hat in the ring.
Well, no. The job working for the judge was not a $16,000.
Right.
That was a good paying job, right? It wasn't as good as the law firm, but it was
$17,000. I'm sorry. I forgot.
17.5. So yeah, decided to give that up to involve myself in this way.
And you've been working. I want to talk about the journey in a second, but you've been working in government as an elected official ever since, correct?
Yeah. So that was the election was
Almost 10 years.
Well, yeah. If you include the Supreme Court, yeah, that's 10 years because I started there in 2014.
Wow.
Yeah, I started there in 2014.
So you run for election. How does that affect your daily life? Like, you have to put yourself out there in a way that you probably have never done before.
Right.
You got to shake hands and kiss babies and all that.
Yeah, you have to do it all. It's 24/7. You always have to be on, obviously, and
Right.
it's a commitment, you know. And like I said, it's really not for everybody because
I could never do it. No, because I just, you know, again, not that I don't want to serve, but it takes a special kind of person to give themselves so willingly to always listen to other people's problems, because most of the time it's the problems you hear about.
Oh,
right?
sure.
You know, they want to look at you as the solution.
Yeah, and that's a responsibility that I embrace. You know, it's an honor that I have always felt like we have to restore a level of nobility to public service.
Right.
We have to We have to look
I
at
agree.
public service as something that's honorable, and because it is an honorable profession.
It absolutely
right?
is.
And yeah, it's challenging, but it's also so rewarding. Like
Right. I can only imagine the rewards that you
it's so
reap
rewarding,
on a
right? Yes,
daily or weekly basis.
people are frustrated, and rightfully so. And my message is that I'm here to serve on your behalf because I know your frustration. I know what you're dealing with, and I may not be in your position, but I see it, I feel it, and I want to help bring about change. So I can't do it alone. It takes us all working together, and I want to be a part of making government better so that it better serves the people.
It takes a village.
Yeah, absolutely.
village is
Everybody has a
government.
role to play. So the campaign is one thing, the governing is something else. So when it came time for me to go public, yeah, I mean
How was that campaign, that first campaign? How was that?
I was very fortunate in my first campaign because I had the benefit of having a lot of support from the community, right? So when I offered myself, because I had a history of serving, I had also been the president. You mentioned earlier the National Bar Association. The local affiliate in New Orleans is the Louis A. Martinet Society. AP Turo was one of the founding members.
Wow.
That's the Black Lawyers Association.
Right.
So we're the local affiliate. I was the president of the Louis A. Martinet Society. So having been involved in that way, people knew my reputation. People
Right.
knew what I was about.
They knew all you gotta do is Royce talk to you for 5 seconds, and they know what you're about.
Well,
man.
I appreciate
you're
that.
a genuine guy.
Thank you. And when I offered myself up, look, it took a lot of work. Let me be
Right.
clear.
Absolutely.
But
I can't imagine.
But it was a district race. The geographical bounds of the district was such that it was walkable. So I could really get out
so
there.
you were
and knock
literally walking
doors.
on doors, meeting with your constituents.
Exactly.
In that way.
It's a very walkable district. So that made the race fun, and it was a short race because, like I said, it was to fill a special election or a vacancy. So it was like a 3-month race. So it was a sprint.
Wow.
And I had a lot of support, and we were able to win the first race with 72%.
72%. That's a landslide.
Yeah. So it was 4 people in the race, and
you got 72. Wait, you slow down, brother. Hold on. You wasn't up against one person. You were up against 3.
Yeah.
And you got 72% of the vote.
Yeah, I was very fortunate that first race.
That's not fortunate. That's called a good old butt whooping.
Yeah.
Okay. That's called a Michael Jordan dominant victory.
Yeah. But again, it was humbling. It was very humbling, and we had to get straight to work. So at that time, we win. March 24th, 2018 was the election day, and 2 weeks later, April 10th, I'm getting sworn in at the state capitol because it was during a session. I'm literally getting sworn in April 10th, and that day I'm taking votes on the House floor.
Wow.
And then
you had to come up to speed very quickly.
I mean, like right instantly. And that's one of the things that that was a big part of our campaign message. I had been doing a lot of the work, right? I had never served in the legislature
But you were
before,
familiar with the work.
But I was familiar with just how to work with people and get things done. And we were also very close to having Reese. Crystal was, I guess, Reese was born.
Reese is your daughter.
That's my daughter, yeah. So she was born May 27th. So all of that happened in a short period of time. So
What
my
a
life,
great year.
Yeah, my life changed dramatically. I mean, I left the Supreme Court, started my own firm, hung out my shingle, but that was more secondary to getting elected. And then Reese was born like right after. So it was quite a year.
That sounds like one hell of a year.
Yeah.
A year for the
2018
for the record
was one to remember.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you work in as a elected official.
Yeah.
And at some point you decide you're going to go for state senator.
Yeah. So that was also more of just a timing type of scenario. So was not unhappy in the House. Love my district. I had one of the best, the best House district in the state. Had all the French Quarter, all the Treme,
that is the best
7th
district.
Ward, Lower Garden District, Central City, just a beautiful, beautiful district.
That's where everybody who visits New Orleans goes.
That's what I say. When you're in New Orleans, you're gonna probably be in my district, right?
Right. Absolutely, 100%.
So we then have another vacancy. My senator resigned, and that seat came open. So I had been serving for 4 years at the time, and I wasn't necessarily in a rush to move up, but because the seat was vacant, I believe
You saw an opportunity.
I believe I was qualified, and the voters agreed. So we had another kind of short race, if you will, to fill that vacancy. That was in the vacancy occurred the summer of 2022, and the election was in the fall of 2022. So I've been in the Senate now almost 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And from everything I can see from how, I follow you from afar, it seems to be going great. You seem to be engaged with your constituents, engaged with the people. You're on the ground, boots on the ground. You're in Baton Rouge. You're in New Orleans. You're all over the place. And you're in D.C. now.
Yeah, we're working.
Fundraising.
Yeah. Well, just connecting, and it's all coming together. CBC is always a good time.
And CBC is the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah.
It's an annual time of year here in D.C. where politicians get together and get things done.
Yeah.
Make the connections to get things done in the future.
Right.
And, I'm proud to support you and your endeavors. And I'm honored to be invited to anything that you can go to, which means give me to all the parties, please, because you're connected. But seriously, though, man, it is truly an inspiration.
Thank you, brother.
To see someone who I've literally watched grow up.
Yeah, literally.
Just not even exceed expectations, because I already knew you guys. You're not even there where you don't even know where you're going. I know, I can see it. But whether you see it or not, you'll realize it sooner rather than later, man.
Thank you, brother.
It's truly an honor to have you here. And I know you are busy. You're a busy man. You've got to get meeting with presidents and leading the state and all this kind of stuff.
Man. I'm here to meet with you,
right? But I'm glad I'm glad you are here with me today.
I'm proud of you, brother. No,
hey,
you're an inspiration.
Look, if anything that I can do to support you, I will do it and continue to do it.
You've always done that.
And I will say, in all seriousness, I don't know whether you're interested in running for the mayor of New Orleans or not, but every time I go home, I just think like, man, Royce would look really good right there in that place. So if that's something that does interest you, I really encourage you to go for it.
Yeah, I want to be in the place where I can have the most impact. I want to be in a place where I'm best suited, and I want to be where the people want me to be. Right. So if that's where it is, then that's where that's where I'm offering myself. But it's all about timing and making sure that I'm in the best possible place to make the best possible difference.
Well, I don't think we could end on any better note than that. I really thank you for coming in, my brother.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me. This is an honor.
I'm glad you came. I'm glad I ran into you in the airport, like on some happenstance.
That
stuff,
was pure coincidence. So it was meant to be.
It was.
It was meant to be.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Less than 24 hours later.
Yeah.
And I'm really appreciative of it, man. And
thank you so much for
coming
on. Thank you.
And we'll see you soon.
Thank you for doing it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour. Please subscribe to this podcast. It's available everywhere, including Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. New episodes are released on the 12th of each month, and if you'd like to see the video version of any interview, they can be found on my YouTube page at the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you on the B-side.